Formosa Files is sponsored by the Frank C. Chen Cultural Foundation.
Well, we're going up this hill here, and you can see Fort San Domingo, or the Red Fort, as it's often known, and as it was known at the time as the Red Fort. And in 1884, it was the British consulate in Danshui. At the time of the battle, British consul Alexander Frater was a very well-respected man in the community, in the expat community.
Yes. Just a word about the name Fort San Domingo, a Spanish name, but it's actually a Dutch fort, not really Spanish. The fort the Spanish built was a small wooden one and partly dismantled when they left. The Dutch built a new, stronger one and named it Fort Antonio, named after Anthony van Diemen, who was the Governor-General of the Dutch East Indies Company down in Batavia. But anyway, what would have been going on here during the battle?
Okay, well, let's remember that the Battle of Danshui occurred primarily on 2 days, October 2nd and 8th. On the 2nd, anyone here would have been cowering behind walls or under the floorboards as French shells were landing all over the place, and most people would have been somewhere else.
But were they targeting areas where the expats lived?
It seems that a lot of shells were landing in those areas, and the expats weren't very happy about it. There seems to be no logical reason for it, but according to the first-hand accounts of people who were here at the time, such as British tea merchant John Dodd and the famous Canadian George Leslie Mackay, the French shells were landing all over the place, and noise of them and falling and exploding was terrifying.
Was the British consul Frater here at the time?
I doubt it. He would most likely have been on the British ship, the HMS Cockchafer, which was moored in the river.
The HMS, so Her Majesty's ship. Sorry, what was that name again?
The Cockchafer. An interesting point. Mackay was offered a chance to go aboard to get refuge from the shelling, but he refused because his Taiwanese converts to Christianity were not allowed to go with him.
Okay, you said Mackay earlier, and now it's Mackay. I say Mackay.
I think it's Mackay. I don't know why I say Mackay.
Mackay.
Let's call the whole thing off.
All right. Mackay?
Mackay, yes.
Mackay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be the Scottish pronunciation. And he was from northern Scotland. And he's still very Scottish, even though he's Canadian.
Yeah, he referred to himself as Scottish, didn't he? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we? We walked up to the top of a hill. Well, that was a steep climb, but relatively short at least.
Yes, so here we are in Zhenli Street, one of the most historical streets in Taiwan, especially if you're looking at foreign architecture or foreign-inspired architecture from in a historical period. And just look down the street. It's a narrow little street with walls and old buildings, Chinese-style buildings and Western-style buildings, just dripping with history, really. And Mackay's footprint is everywhere. Here's Zhenli University, formerly Oxford College. Named after Oxford County in Canada, not Oxford University.
Okay, yeah.
Because apparently a lot of the residents of Oxford County in Ontario had contributed. So this is a tribute to them. Now it's Zhenli University. You can see the preserved old building there. You can see it through the fence. Part of that facade was damaged by a French shell.
Wow. Oh, and there's the Danshui Girls' School. I recall you told me of recording. That was slightly damaged by the bombing too.
That's right. Yes, exactly. And that was, I think, is definitely the first girls' school in a modern sense in Taiwan. It may have been one of the first in East Asia. But, okay. On the left here is Danjiang Senior High School. Some really cool architecture. It was built after Mackay's death. It was built in the 1900s. But his grave is at the back, next to the Foreigners Cemetery, which is a very interesting little place.
What's this beautiful old white building on the right?
That is the Danshui Customs Officer's Residence, also known as the Little White House. Do you see those big depressions in the ground? Those are the old blast craters from French shells. The government has decided to preserve them from history.
Nice. So it would have been raining shells in this area on October 2nd?
Yeah, some shells passed overhead, some landed with a bang, many landed and didn't go off. It would have been a very scary day. And, let's take this little road here.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, it leads to a walking bridge over the main road.
Nice view of the river mouth from here. Down these steps to another little street, and the sign says this is Mackay Street.
Mackay Street, yes. They sure let you know it with all the murals of Mackay, which were quite nice. And then, moving down and looking to our left, you see that little red door about 30 meters away.
Yes.
That's the first accommodation Mackay had when he first arrived in Danshui at the end of 1871. Apparently, it was a converted horse stable.
Ooh.
And not very glamorous. Pretty dilapidated today, but it's still used and maintained in a basic way by a group of local Christians.
And around this corner, wow, that's a beautiful church, the Danshui Presbyterian Church.
Yes, the Danshui Presbyterian Church, known by some as the Danshui Church. This version was built in 1933, replacing the original one built by Mackay. But this building here is original, the Mackay Clinic, although at that time it was referred to as the Hobei Clinic or just the Mission Clinic. During the battle on October 8th, wounded Qing soldiers were treated here by doctors Johansen, who was the chief surgeon here, and Brown, the medical officer from the cockchafer.
I guess this was one way that Mackay could show that he was not on the side of the French. He's helping the Qing soldiers.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. And the foreign community here were very nervous about the possibility that anti-French sentiment by the Qing might have spilled over to the other Westerners who, probably looked very similar to the Qing.
Yeah, no kidding, yeah.
And British residents reportedly hung British flags outside their doors to make sure people knew they weren't French. But Mackay was quite a philanthropist, so I'm sure he would have helped out in any case, even if that had not have been a factor.
And did any of the Qing officials or soldiers get aggressive toward the non-French expats?
Not according to any of the reports I've heard. The man in charge of Danshui at the time was General Sun Kai-hua, and he was by all accounts a very urbane and sophisticated man. He enjoyed chatting with some of the foreign residents. There were no reports of mistreatment. In fact, the expats had a lot of respect for him. And Dodd said, the British tea merchant John Dodd, said that Sun showed great courage during the shelling.
What's the term the Brits use? He had a lot of bottle?
Yes, in more ways than one. According to Dodd, he greatly enjoyed drinking French champagne.
French champagne. Not a good choice. On a more serious note, I just want to point out that although the foreign community escaped unharmed, no retribution, during and right after the Sino-French War, Taiwanese Christians did suffer. Some were killed, and I think 7 Presbyterian churches were destroyed, burned down.
Yes. The British consul, Alexander Frater, complained about this to Liu Mingchuan, who, to his credit, gave a sizable payment so that the churches could be rebuilt.
So now we're coming to that famous statue of Mackay. It's one of the only public statues of a Westerner in Taiwan, as far as I know.
Yes, the Mackay bronze statue in the triangular park on the old street of Danshui. Do you like it?
Yeah.
All right. So it's an interesting statue. Anyway, so now we're down into the really busy part of the old street, and here's the famous Fuyo Temple, a Matsu temple. And according to some sources, after the battle, the heads of 6 French Marines were hung here on a bamboo scaffolding